Game week 10 is done and dusted in the Premier League, and once again plenty of talking points for myself, Bobbie Jackson and Jack Ogalbe to take you through today. There's only one place to start though really, and that was Friday night's game. It kicked off the weekend in fantastic fashion. A lethal Leicester City putting 9 past Southampton. Okay, there was a sending off early on for the Saints, but Leicester still put them to the sword. Some sides might have scored 4 or 5 and given up there. Leicester had history in their sights. We did hear from Jamie Vardy. He said at half-time Johnny Evans told them that they could go and break a record. They needed 10 to do that. They got 9 in the end. Hat-trick for Vardy, hat-trick for Perez, Tielemans and also James Maddison involved in the goal scoring. We need to focus on Leicester really because, I mean, the campaign has gone so well for them so far. They've only lost twice. That was against Liverpool and Manchester United. They're in 3rd place, just 2 adrift of Manchester City, and are actually 1 point better off now than they were at this stage in the season they won the Premier League. Are we looking at a top 4 side here, or are we looking at a team that can realistically challenge?
Absolutely. I think we are looking at a top 4 side at a minimum at the moment.
Yeah.
They were so good, weren't they, on Friday? 9-0 tells its own story, but it was embarrassing for Southampton. They were just terrible, and Leicester put them to the sword. And it was, Southampton were bad, but they were bad because Leicester was so good. The first team to win 9-0 away from home in the history of the Premier League. There's been a lot of hype around this Leicester team all summer long. We've been talking about what Brendan Rodgers is going to do. They've now transformed that into the season, and I think top 4 is a minimum for them. Look at the talent. They're so exciting to watch. 3rd in the table. I think we could see them there at the end of the season as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned Brendan Rodgers. He's obviously a key factor in all of this, isn't he? They've had a few managers since that title-winning campaign with Claudio Ranieri, and you put it down a lot to the manager that time around. It was the way he galvanised the squad. And you feel Rodgers is doing a similar thing, different tactics, but similar type of thing, getting them together. The players seem to be thriving under him. They've only lost 5 times since he took over in February, so that obviously stretches back to last season. And it's the way that they get the ball forward. Obviously, they've got good, talented, creative players through that midfield, but again, they're playing to their strengths, which is what happened when they won the title. Get that to Jamie Vardy, and he'll do the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. Jamie Vardy, a hat-trick. I mean, he's forever young, isn't he? He just keeps scoring the goals for the Foxes. If I was Gareth Southgate, I'd be on the phone to him ahead of Euro 2020 in the summer, because there's not many better options out there for England at the moment. Of course, retiring from international football, but I'm sure he could be tempted back, especially if it's on the back of a top 4, 3rd, 2nd, maybe 1st, I don't think so though, season with Leicester.
Yeah, he has got 9 goals in the Premier League so far this season, the top scorer in the division, so going fantastically well is Jamie Vardy. We'll go across to one of the other games then, and that was Sunday's match that saw Liverpool taking on Tottenham. We've spoken about a lot about Liverpool here on our reviews of the Premier League weekend, so we'll go over to Tottenham this time around. They did take the lead in the match, less than a minute gone when Harry Kane nodded in, but going into the second half, Liverpool's pressure eventually came good, and they were able to turn it around. Henderson scoring, Salah then with the penalty to give Liverpool a 2-1 win. It leaves Tottenham sitting 11th in the table. They're now 8 points adrift of top 4. That was their minimum really for this season to get Champions League football again. They've done it for the last 4 seasons in a row. At the moment, it looks as though it's going to be a real struggle to do it again.
Well, they've not won away from home since January, have they? Yeah. That is not good enough for a team who we thought were going to be challenging for the title this year. We kind of saw, pinpointed probably both Leicester and Spurs as the teams who may be able to challenge Liverpool and Manchester City at the top of the table, but they've not been good enough. Talk of infighting. Mauricio Pochettino said he would have left if they'd won the Champions League, and that's kind of set the tone for things. You feel they are a team in transition and they're struggling big time. I think one of the big positives actually to come from that defeat at Anfield was the form of Pablo Gazzaniga. No Hugo Lloris at the moment, but he made 12 saves, which is the best since December 2017 in the Premier League. David De Gea on that occasion, but he has looked shaky. He's a young, well, say he's young, he's 27, but he's young for a goalkeeper, needs a run of games, and I think if he can find some form, they've got something extra, but, well, the defence is the problem in front of him.
Yeah, for me, too many passengers at Tottenham, as you mentioned, in defence, players that possibly want to leave and aren't too happy there. Even further down the pitch, I know Christian Eriksen has been great for them over the years, but a bit of a luxury player at times, and he seemingly wants to go as well, isn't that interested. Dele Alli's another that's been mentioned. doesn't really cover much ground, scores goals now and then, but hasn't really kicked on from those early stages. And you feel there's too many of those players now in that Tottenham squad.
Yeah, and they're still playing the way they played 5 years ago, and all about pace and power. And you look at Vertonghen and Alderweireld, they're both out of contract in the summer. I know Davinson Sanchez is being phased in at the moment, and he has made a big difference because he's got pace. They're trying to press, but they're not quick enough to do it all around the field at the moment. And it's football. Things are cyclical. People get stale. They need to move on. It just happens. You can't help it. And I think that's what we're seeing at Tottenham at the moment.
Yeah, well, we'll go from one North London side to another, and not quite as desperate on the on the red side, I suppose I should say, with Arsenal. But still problems that need to be discussed. They threw away a 2-goal lead for the second time this season on Sunday. They were 2-0 up at home to Crystal Palace. They've been going well this season, but I think Arsenal would have gone into it still thinking they should get all 3 points. They were 2-0 up from a couple of set pieces, then in the end were held to a 2-2 draw. VAR maybe wrongly, rightly, however you see it, ruling out that the goal late on for Arsenal, denying them all 3 points. But I think a side like Arsenal, as much as they'll moan about that VAR decision, they probably should have got the job done earlier. Yeah,
well, home's been their salvation recently, and in recent years they've been poor on the road, and if you're 2-0 up, you can't be. That's just not good enough, is it? Again, it's a bit like Tottenham, where they just don't seem to have that clinical edge. And again, questions of infighting. They've been a team in transition for about 15 years now, Arsenal, haven't they? They simply cannot get it together on the field. They've got some good young players coming through, but even then, I'm not quite sure they're going to be good enough. I saw them in the Europa League, and it was nice football, but there wasn't any competitive streak. There was no ruthlessness in them, and that's in the first team as it is. So if it's not being pushed on from below, where do they go? There's talk of Unai Emery losing his job. Who's going to come in and do anything better?
Yeah, for me it's a matter of control, I think, as well. We mentioned that twice this season now they've thrown away a 2-goal lead. A side that wants to be competing for top 4 football and silverware is where Arsenal feel they should be. When you get a 2-goal lead in a game, you should not be releasing that. It's about managing the match from that point, making sure you control possession, sit back a little bit, let the opposition come onto you, and then you can break on them when the spaces are there. But they just seem to lose their heads a little bit, and I suppose you then come towards leadership and who's in control. The man who was wearing the captain's armband, Granit Xhaka, well, he was booed off the field. He walked off, ambled off the pitch. Whether that was the reason for the booing or his overall performance, maybe a mix of the two. He was then understood to have maybe said some expletives towards the crowd. He was cupping his ear, took his shirt off, went down the tunnel. I mean, there's big problems there.
Absolutely, and he was voted in by the players as the captain, wasn't he, after Laurent Koscielny's departure. And Xhaka, he was a great player in Germany in the Bundesliga with Mönchengladbach, but since then he's just not performed for me for Arsenal. I'm not quite sure, does he want to go forward? Does he want to hold? I thought he was hiding what I saw yesterday when the wheels started to come off. Obviously he's a big personality, but he seems to talk the talk, but when it comes to walking the walk, I'm not quite sure. And if the squads voted him in and then Unai Emery goes back on that, there's a mutiny on the cards. It's a strange old situation, the Emirates.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of working out. Emery has since said following the game that he will have a discussion privately with Granit Xhaka, so we'll, I suppose, watch this space. They are involved in Carabao Cup action in midweek before back to the Premier League next weekend. Well, that's it from myself and Jack. Another busy weekend of Premier League football. Do follow us on those social media channels, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, and make sure you join us again next week when we'll be looking at the game week 11 of Premier League action.